The Jewish Detroit Initiative is a student group through Michigan Hillel that creates opportunities throughout the year for students at the University of Michigan to engage with one another and engage with Detroiters through events in the city and in Ann Arbor. I think that JDI's mission is to expose Michigan students to the many diverse narratives that exist in the city of Detroit, and really all of the complexities and the knowledge around Detroit's history and its future and its present, and through that to allow them to gain a vested interest in the success and the revitalization in the city of Detroit. It started through an alternative spring break trip. It was Michigan Hillel's first alternative spring break trip to Detroit. It was 3 years ago, and once we came back from that trip, we realized that there are so many more ways to engage in Detroit and to continue the relationship that we had started to build with the Detroiters that we had met on our trip. So stemming out of that trip, we started to plan events throughout the year to engage more people within the Hillel community and outside of it in the city and all it has to offer.
Favorite memory of JDI was the alternative spring break I went on in March. So we got to really be immersed in the city of Detroit, but also tie it back into both our lives in Ann Arbor and our lives growing up, which converged all cities all across the nation where we came from, so it was nice to tie those all up in Detroit for that week.
One of my favorites is when we went down to Detroit in the winter for when we went ice skating, and definitely the big slide. It was so fun. I went so far. It was really fun. It was very high, but it was really fun.
There's ice skating and food and music, and there's Detroiters and people from the suburbs, so it's a really awesome group of people, or an awesome space with a lot of energy. So we went to that event, and then we did a Havdalah service at the downtown synagogue alongside students from Wayne and Jewish Detroiters living in the city. So I loved that. That was a great event because it had a nice balance between Jewish life and just engaging with Detroiters and having a good time in the city.
My favorite JDI memory was this past April when we had our big event D360, which was a way to see Detroit through your own lens, and we held it in Detroit, and it was really cool for me because we all worked really hard to plan it, and it was really amazing to see all of our hard work culminate and to see all of these young college students be so inspired by these incredible people doing amazing things in Detroit, and it was just really great and inspiring.
The goal was to create opportunities for students around the region, so not just Michigan, but also Michigan State, Oakland, Wayne, and all over, to see Detroit through the lens of the things that they were interested in, to recognize that Detroit isn't just what they're seeing on the news, it's not just what they're hearing from their parents, but there are spaces for them to really get involved and learn and take ownership over the things that they care about. So we provided those narratives through bringing in over 20 young adults who are living in the city doing awesome things, whether it's starting their own businesses or teaching in classrooms or community organizing. We really had the whole gamut, and creating a space for students to engage with and hear from those Detroiters was really awesome, and I think the energy around that sparked a lot of interest in getting more involved.
I thought it was a great way to see everything from the serious to the fun to everything in between, from learning about education in Detroit and how that differs or is similar to other cities, to the opportunities in Detroit, to most importantly the ways that different people graduating college or in the younger demographic can find their niche in the city of Detroit. Hearing from people who've done it over the last 5 or 10 years is a really cool experience.
I loved that I couldn't get anyone to stop talking. So we had 2 short breakout sessions around different topics, and it was really difficult to transition from one breakout session to the next because people just wanted to keep talking, keep hearing everyone's stories. People were exchanging email addresses with students and speakers at the end of the event, and that sort of exchange and that sort of energy was definitely my favorite part.
My favorite JDI memory has been the conversations that have taken place during and after JDI events, whether it's after an actual event or after a meeting, just sitting back and talking with the people who are so passionate about Detroit and about entering communities in a respectful way and having fun in Detroit and all of those different things. You don't really have many spaces otherwise to talk about topics like that, so those have been my favorite experiences.
I learned a lot about the Jewish life in Detroit, which I think a lot of people, Detroit used to be a very prominently Jewish city, and I think that it's been overshadowed by everything else about Detroit recently, and I think that, especially going to the downtown synagogue, kind of finding our Jewish roots in Detroit is something that I probably wouldn't have learned about unless it was with JDI.
I think our biggest success is that we work really hard to not provide a singular view of what Detroit is. We really strive to show nuance in the city, that it's not just young people moving downtown, and that it's not just blight in the neighborhoods, but that there are people that have been living there for 20, 30, 40 years that are doing community organizing, that have been working hard to keep the city thriving, that there's fun parts about Detroit, that there's challenging parts about Detroit. I'm proud that Jewish Detroit Initiative has really worked to challenge the typical narrative of the city that you might, like I said, see on the news or from your parents, but really provide those nuances.
In Ann Arbor, we're so close to Detroit, but a lot of us don't even ever make it to Detroit. And being involved in JDI has really given me the opportunity to see some of these incredible things that are going on so close to us, and what our position is in that, and how we can get involved, and how we can be inspired through our own passions in a city that's so close to us.
We don't only focus on one aspect of Detroit. So one day we'll do a service project, the next day we'll have a social event, and that way, I think that some organizations don't encompass the entirety of Detroit like JDI does. And it's small and it's new, so you have the potential to be a part of the founding core.
If they're interested in art, maybe we help them plan a trip to the DIA. If they're interested in food, maybe we help bring a speaker to Ann Arbor that's doing work in Detroit Food Labs. So I think that there's a lot of space for students not only to do things in Detroit, but also to take initiative around the things that they're interested in. And so if that's what you're looking to do, the Jewish Detroit Initiative Board can definitely help with that. And then if you're just looking to kind of dip your toes, there are a lot of events that we have throughout the year that you can find through social media and through talking to us.
We have this different focus than what a lot of different Detroit groups have, not only on campus but around the United States. Whenever people think about Detroit, they think about this poor, sad place that needs help. And even though JDI sometimes does have discussions about complications that the city is facing, it also very much talks about what are the cool things that are going on, what are the improvements that are happening in Detroit. And not only do we get to talk about it, we get to see it. We're only 40 minutes away from the city, and so getting involved with JDI provides an opportunity to not only have discussions and not only go in and volunteer, but also to go in and have a great time in Detroit, because Detroit does have a lot of really cool things going on that you wouldn't hear about if you were just listening to the news or just volunteering.
For me, Detroit is about continually learning those other narratives and respecting them, and entering the city as a young person, knowing where I come from and knowing my own experiences, and figuring out how I can get involved in a way, like I said, that's genuine and that's meaningful and helpful. So I don't know, Detroit for me is really a space to make a difference. It's a space to engage with people, but it's also a space for me to take a step back and learn what I don't know, and figure out how I can participate in what's already happening, and really be a part of a movement that started long before I